Hi, my name's Paul Grogan. Welcome to the first video in my How to Play series for Rococo Deluxe Edition, designed by Matthias Kramer, Louis and Stefan Maltz, and published by Eagle-Gryphon Games, who sponsored this video. It's 18th century France, and King Louis XV is hosting the final grand ball of the season, where important luminaries dress up in extravagant gowns and fancy frock coats. You are the owner of a distinguished tailoring business, creating the requested garments to rent or sell, or funding some of the many decorations and firework displays. The game plays over the course of 7 rounds, during which players will take turns to play an employee card from their hand and perform one of 6 possible tasks, such as acquiring resources, tailoring a garment, hiring a new employee, or funding some of the many decorations. However, not all employees can perform all tasks, so you must plan carefully how you direct them. After 7 rounds, the grand ball will end with a brilliant fireworks display and the scores will be added up. Garments that you have rented out to the guests at the ball will grant you prestige, along with the decorations that you have funded and certain employee bonuses. Whoever has collected the most prestige at the end of the game wins. Place the game board in the middle of the play area. The board is 2-sided. Use the side that corresponds to the number of players in the game. Place the Queen's Favour token in the indicated space. Sort the employee cards into levels 1 through 6. Shuffle the level 6 cards and place them face down. Then shuffle the level 5 cards and place them face down on top. Do the same for the level 4 cards, then the level 3 cards, the level 2 cards, and finally the level 1 cards. This forms the new employee's draw deck. Place all of the resource tiles in the resource bag, give it a shake to mix them up, and then place it near the resource display. Do something similar with the garment tiles, placing them in the garment bag and placing it near the garment design display. Each player chooses a colour and takes the items in that colour. A player board, 5 start employee cards which are placed face down to the left of the player board, 20 trademark tokens, and 1 prestige counter placed on the 0 space of the score track. Each player also gets a resource tile rack. Place the coins next to the board to form the bank. Place the thread and lace tokens in a general supply nearby. Each player starts the game with 15 livres, 1 lace token and 1 thread token. The player who last used a needle and thread is the start player and gets the start player token. And with setup complete, you're now ready to play the game. The game is played over 7 rounds and each round is divided into 4 phases. In phase 1, you prepare for a new round by adding new employee cards, resources and garments. In phase 2, each player chooses 3 cards from their employee supply to use in that round. And in phase 3, players then take turns to play employee cards from their hand and perform actions. This continues until all players have played all of their cards from their hand. In phase 4, players collect income, giving them the much needed funds for the next round. The first thing to do is to determine the new start player. Skip this in round 1, but in future rounds, if a player acquired the Queen's Favour in the previous round, they return the token to its space on the board and take the start player token. If no one acquired the Queen's Favour in the previous round, the start player does not change. Next, if there are employee cards remaining in the hire new employees display from the previous round, remove them from the game. This is indicated by the red arrows. Then draw 4 new employee cards from the top of the new employee draw deck and place them face up in the display. Look at the resource display and fill in any empty spaces with new resource tiles drawn randomly from the resource bag. If the resource bag is ever empty, place all of the discarded resource tiles back into the bag and then keep drawing. And finally, check the garment display. If there are any garment tiles remaining in the 2 rightmost spaces, discard them to the garment discard area. Then shift all other remaining garment tiles to the right to fill in any gaps, and then fill each remaining empty space from right to left with a new garment tile, drawn randomly from the bag. Place it showing the design pattern. If the garment bag is ever empty, return all garment tiles in the garment discard area to the bag and then keep drawing. In this phase, each player simultaneously and secretly selects 3 employee cards from among all of the cards currently in their employee supply, which is the face down stack on the left side of their player board. In the first round of the game, this means choosing 3 cards from your possible 5. In later rounds, however, you may have fewer than 3 cards in your employee supply, and in this case, you must first take all of your remaining cards into your hand, then move all of your discarded employee cards back to your employee supply, and then from your supply, select as many cards as you need to bring your hand up to exactly 3 cards. Note that you only make a new employee supply from your discards when your employee supply is empty and you need to select a card. So if you have 3 cards left, you just draw those 3. You don't move your discards back to your supply until you need to draw again. Beginning with the start player and going in clockwise order, players take turns. On your turn, you must play 1 employee card from your hand, placing it face up onto your discard stack to the right of your player board. You then perform 1 main action from the 6 that are available, and in addition, if the card you play has a bonus action on it, you perform this after the main action. This phase continues until all players have played all of the cards in their hand. Employees come in 3 training levels as indicated by the colour of the frame and thimble on the cards. Bronze cards are apprentices, silver cards are journeymen, and gold cards are masters. Not all of the 6 main actions may be performed by all of the employees, and I'll cover this in detail when I go through the different actions. All actions are optional, including the main action, so you could play a card and only perform the bonus action if you want to, and even that is optional. And for the bonus actions, I'm not going to explain all of them here, but they are all summarised on page 12 of the rulebook, and there's a reference sheet included in the game that has them all listed. The first action to explain is claiming the Queen's favour. This can only be performed by masters and journeymen, as depicted by this icon here. When you perform this action, take the Queen's favour token from the board and place it on your player board. You also gain 5 livres from the bank. Having this token at the beginning of the next round means that you will become the new start player. This action can only be performed once per round. At the end of the game, if you have the Queen's favour tile in your possession, you will also receive 3 prestige points during final scoring. The next action to explain is acquiring resources, and this action may be performed by any employee. It's a great use for your apprentices. When you perform this action, you may purchase any 1 resource tile from a drawer of your choice in the resource display. The cost of doing this is determined by the number of resource tiles currently displayed in the selected drawer as depicted here. If there are 3 or 4 tiles in the drawer, it costs 2 livres. If there are 2 tiles in the drawer, it costs 1 livre. And if only 1 tile remains in the drawer, the tile is free. Immediately after you take the tile, you must make a decision. You can either place the tile in your resource tile track, or you can discard the tile to receive the thread and/or lace depicted on the bottom of the tile. And note that some tiles are better than others. This one, for example, can be discarded for a lace or a thread, whereas this one can be discarded for both. Resource tiles in your tile rack contain bales of silk that can be used later to tailor a garment. The tiles are kept secret from the other players. Your opponents will know how many tiles you have, but not what is depicted on them. Thread and lace tokens are open information and must be kept visible to all players. Action 3 is tailoring a garment, which can only be performed by masters and journeymen. When you perform this action, choose one of the garments from the design patterns on display and pay the cost shown below the design. You must also discard enough resources to match all of those depicted on the design pattern tile. Bales of silk, thread and lace. You may discard multiple resource tiles to meet the required amount of silk. However, any excess bales of silk on these tiles are lost. For example, to tailor this gown requires 1 green bale of silk, 1 blue bale of silk and some thread. You only have these resource tiles, so you discard them to give you what you need. The additional green bale and pink bale are wasted. Any lace and thread used is returned to the supply, and any resource tiles used are placed in a discard area to the side of the board. Some design patterns depict a gold thimble. These garments can only be tailored if you perform the action with a master level employee. After you have paid the costs and have discarded all of the required resources, you must immediately decide whether to rent the garment to a guest attending the ball or to sell it. I'll explain selling the garment first, as that's the easiest to explain. You simply discard the garment tile to the discard area and receive livres from the bank as depicted on the tile. To rent the garment out, flip the tile over to the rental side and place it onto any empty guest space of the board in one of the 5 halls. Some spaces depict a gold thimble. You can only place the tile on one of these spaces if the garment was made by a master tailor, regardless of whether or not the garment tile shows a gold symbol on its design side. Also, some of the spaces show a bonus, and if you place a tile on one of these spaces, you gain that bonus immediately, which is either gain livre, gain a thread, gain a lace, or take any resource tile from any of the drawers for free. And if you take a resource tile, choose whether to keep the tile or discard it as usual. Place one of your trademark tokens on the garment to indicate that it was you that rented it out. At the end of the game, you will gain the prestige points shown on the tile. Which hall you choose to place the garment in will be important for the end of game scoring, which I'll mention in detail later on, but essentially the players with the most and second most number of garments in each hall will gain extra prestige. The fourth action is hiring a new employee, and this action can only be performed by a master. When you perform this action, choose one of the employee cards on the board and add it to your hand. The cost to hire a new employee depends on the number of cards currently in the display, as shown here. If there are 4 cards in the display, pay 5 livre to the bank. If there are 3 cards, pay 3 livre, and if there are 2 cards, pay 1 livre. If there's only 1 card in the display, you pay nothing, as clearly nobody else wants them, so they agree to work for free. Because your new employee goes directly into your hand, you can use this card to perform an action later in the same round. Note that the level 6 apprentice employees have a crown icon and an employee bonus on a blue velvet background. These cards do not have a bonus action during the game, but will count for end of game scoring. Action 5 can be performed by any employee, and it is to depute that employee. When you perform this action, the employee that you have just played is sent off to work in the King's Court. First, gain the amount of livre indicated in the bottom left of the card. And then you may use the bonus action of the employee one last time before you remove the card from the game. Place it back in the box. Note, however, that you must always retain a staff of at least 4 employees, and your staff includes employees in your hand, your discard pile, and your deck. The last action to explain is funding a decoration, which can be performed by any employee. The decorations can be found in 4 places on the board. There is one in each hall, which represents a musician. There are decorations in the 2 kitchens. There are statue decorations, and there are the fireworks decorations. When you perform this action, choose one decoration which hasn't yet been funded and pay the cost depicted on the space, and then place one of your trademark tokens on it. Funding a musician will earn you prestige at the end of the game and help break ties when working out the hall majorities. I'll explain this more later on. Funding a statue will also earn you prestige at the end of the game as shown here, which I'll also explain in final scoring. Funding a firework display, yes, you guessed it, points at the end of the game, which I'll explain later. Funding a kitchen decoration, however, will give you the depicted points at the end of the game, but it will also increase your income, and I'm explaining income in the next chapter. Each player may only fund one decoration space in the left side of the kitchen and one in the right side. The top right of the game board is the All Halls bonus. As soon as you are represented in each of the 5 halls, you immediately place one of your trademark tokens in the most valuable empty space for the All Halls bonus. You are represented in a hall as soon as you have at least one of your trademark tokens on a garment or on the musician decoration space. You'll receive the depicted prestige points at the end of the game. Trademark tokens placed here are not decorations, and each player can only have 1 token in this area of the board. After all players have played all of their cards from their hand, the game moves to the income phase. Each player always receives a basic income of 5 livres. Players with trademark tokens on the decorations in the kitchen receive additional income as follows. If you have a token on the left side of the kitchen, you gain additional livre equal to the number of tokens you have on decorations, including ones in the kitchen. So here, for example, if you are playing purple, you would gain an additional 4 livres. If you have a token on the right side of the kitchen, you gain additional livre equal to the number of tokens you have on garments in the halls, that is, the number of garments that you've currently rented out. So here, for example, as purple, you would gain an additional 3 livres. Remember, each player can have at most 1 token in each side of the kitchen. And also note that trademark tokens on the All Halls bonus are not decorations, so do not count for additional income. The game ends after 7 rounds, which is when the new employee deck runs out. Now the grand ball comes to its glorious conclusion and endgame scoring can begin. All of the endgame scoring is shown on the board here, and I recommend that you follow these steps in order so that you don't miss one. First, all players gain 1 prestige point for every 10 livres they return to the bank. Any remaining livre is kept as it may be needed later as a tiebreaker. Next, if you have any employee cards with end of game bonuses, whether they be in your hand, deck or discard, score prestige for them as shown on the reference sheet. And if you have the Queen's Favour token, gain 3 prestige points at this time. Next, in each of the 5 halls, the players with the most and second most garment rentals in that hall gain prestige as depicted next to the hall. The player with the most garments receives the higher number of prestige points, and the player with the second most garments receives the lower number of prestige points. Ties are broken in favour of the player with more garments on master guest spaces in this hall. If still tied, the tied player with the musician decoration wins the tie. If there is no such player, all tied players receive the full rewards, which is the points for the first place, and no points are awarded for second place. Note that in a 2-player game, only the player who wins the majority in each hall gains points. There is no prestige for second place. Determining the majority in fireworks is next. The player with the most fireworks decorations gains 7 or 6 prestige depending on the side of the board being used, and the player with the second most gains 3 or 2 prestige. If there is a tie, the tied player whose token is on the most expensive fireworks decoration wins the tie, which is the one furthest to the right. And note again, in a 2-player game, only the player with the most firework decorations gains prestige points. There is nothing for second place. Step 5 is my favourite part of the game. For each firework decoration a player has funded, they may move one of their garments from the Royal Hall to that decoration space on the balcony. This represents the noble stepping outside to admire the fireworks display at the end of the game. Those garments will be worth more prestige later in the scoring. If you have funded more firework decorations than you have garments in the Royal Hall, just leave those empty, they'll be worth no prestige. Next is the statues. For each of your trademark tokens on a statue decoration, you gain 2 prestige for each different colour of garments on the board. There are 4 different colours of garments, so you can gain a maximum of 8 prestige points per statue. However, if you have funded more than one statue, you must use different sets of garments up to 4 colours for each statue. In other words, you can't use the same garment on more than one statue. And finally, score prestige points for all trademark tokens on garments, decorations, and the All Halls bonus. Any garment in the fireworks display has its prestige multiplied as indicated. The player with the most prestige wins the game. If there is a tie, the tied player with the most remaining livres wins. I hope you found this video useful in learning how to play Rococo Deluxe Edition. There is more included in the game which I haven't covered in this video, and if you're looking for rules on the jewellery expansion, fancy dresses, festivity dresses and the solo game, I've created another video just for those, which you can get to by clicking the little eye in the corner of the screen. Please remember to give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment if you enjoyed it, and if you have any questions about the game, please feel free to ask me. Thank you to Eagle-Gryphon Games for sponsoring this video, and to all of my Patreon supporters that help fund the channel. Until next time, take care, and thanks for watching. Gaming Rules is proudly sponsored by Game Toppers, upgrading your gaming experience. Visit GameToppersLLC.com.